candidates question time for the elections 2015. I'm Anna Hume, I'm going to be chairing this meeting. I'm the Policy and Democracy Officer, and this is Andy Ash, the Democracy and Representation Coordinator. So we're going to try and make sure that everything goes swimmingly tonight and that nobody's too rude about other candidates or anything. So if you're watching the live feed and you want to take part, you can do that on Twitter or on Facebook using the hashtag #BigStudentElections. So on the agenda tonight, we're going to have each candidate is going to give a 5-minute speech, and that's going to be followed by a question and answers. We're doing it in alphabetical order, so first up we're going to have Vice President Diversity, then Education, then Sports and Wellbeing, then Support, then Volunteering Development, and finally we're going to have the President. And then we're going to speak about Ron, and that's about it. So first up should be the Vice President of Diversity, but unfortunately Raj is not able to make it today. He's not well, so we're going to move on to the Vice President of Education. So I'd like to ask Michael O'Donnell to come up and give a speech.
If I start getting a lot of pain, sorry, but my jaw's pretty sore. First of all, as you know, I'm Michael O'Donnell, standing for Vice President Education. Originally, why I want to stand for this position is, through the entire time I've been here, people keep saying how things used to be, how good things used to be, how good things used to be, and that's not good enough. We need to make things good now. So I've split my manifesto into 3 areas: academic aims, fighting cuts, and around your campus. Academic aims was looking at things like bringing forward the academic year, so exams would be in December instead of January. As well, this early timetable would also allow for the release of timetables to be earlier, and this helps for people trying to go home at Christmas or trying to go home at the end of the year, because oftentimes flights can get very expensive, and this restricts international students, and we know, as well as students, we know that money is hard to come by at the best of times. Never mind when you've got to shell out loads of money for flights. There's also the idea of making a more accessible complaint system for your lecturers or classes. If you have a problem, very often it can just be swept away because our lecturers always don't have time to deal with that. So I'd like to put in a system that would allow complaints. If a complaint's made to a lecturer or class, the email would be sent to me and the lecturer, and then I would follow that up. And this would allow it to be actually dealt with rather than just swept away. Over the last few years, this university has been ravaged with cuts, especially in the HAS department, but I'm not going to focus just on HAS. I'm going to focus across the whole university. So in my meetings with the principal, I'll seek assurances from him that cuts will not be made to any classes, or discontinuation of classes will stop. And I will seek a written assurance from him so that I can present this if he does try and go back on his word. Around campus, right now, as I say, money is hard to come by, and very often during summer, students are left with no support. And as we all know as well, that part-time jobs are even harder to come by than they were previous. So I look to lobby the Scottish Government and the Labour Party and any other party who wishes to try and form the government in 2016 to push them and ask them what they're going to do with that and how to help funding for students. I'm also looking to look into the possibility of getting rid of the graduation charge for those who don't wish to attend. Right now it's £20 instead of £5 to attend, but there's no real reason why someone should have to pay £20 just to get like a little box with their degree in it. So basically that's all I've got to say. So thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll vote for me.
So thank you, Michael. If anybody has any questions, there's going to be a mic going around, and feel free to ask. Hands off if anyone's got any questions.
You say the union used to be better the way it was. What do you think caused that degradation in the first place? How will you address that degradation?
Well, it's been a number of things really. Some people have said it's pretty like the classes are just overcrowded. So there's no space for certain classes. It's because I'm a student coming from politics and history. It's very often to do with the cuts that have been levelled against us. It's more so about the university itself, which is what I'm going to try and address as Vice President of Education. But there also does need to be improvement to the union. I remember before I came here, because I came from college in the second year, my friend invited me along, and I came here and the place was full, and I thought this is great, this is part of the university experience. I came here, it's never been about that. So along with the rest of the youth execs and the Vice President of Volunteer and Development and all the rest of them and the Presidents, we'll look into how to address the situation with the union and the university.
So we don't need a
Hi. There's already scope for the university to change the calendar of dates, and they're trying to do that as a probation now, so how else are you going to change it?
Well, I'll work with the head of departments and make sure that we are actually putting in put out discussions and make sure that we are following these up and continuing to press them to make sure this is actually going to take place, rather than beginning a dialogue and then it just drifts away because everyone just forgets about it. I believe Nick was...
Yeah, so it's just about timetabling for sports.
Yeah.
Every year there's always problems. You get promised that there won't be any Wednesday afternoon classes, but it doesn't seem to get adhered to. How would you work to do this?
Well, again, I'll look to talk to any, if the exam time, the timetables come out and there is an actual issue with that, whether it's Anne-Marie or you that wins, I'd like to work with both whatever one wins to make sure that's not a problem, and if it does, then I'll lobby the heads of the department who that is a problem.
Okay, are there any further questions? In that case, thank you very much, Michael, and we'll move on to the next. So next up we have got the Vice President of Sports and Wellbeing. So I'd like to invite Anne-Marie and Nick Martin up to the front. And first of all, if you give your speech, Anne-Marie, and then Nick. And I should have mentioned at the start, if you keep talking for 4.5 minutes, I'll ring the bell, and we've got half minutes.
Sorry. We're bad.
Hi guys, my name's Anne-Marie Kennerly. I'm a sport and physical activity student and I'm running for the position of Sports and Wellbeing. This year I've been Vice Captain of the Netball Club. Within this year so far we've introduced a new third bucks team who are currently fighting for promotion. We've introduced weekly strength and conditioning sessions which I plan to deliver myself. And we've developed a new social media website which has seen about 300 likes so far. I've also been the events officer for the sports exec, organising events such as the bus crawl, which had 259 seaters taking part for the first time, so that was 2 full buses. Also done captain's dinner and the Take Me Out night, which a couple of nights ago, which raised over £1,100 for the sports union, with students just paying £2 a head, which was a massive success. I'm wanting to have some different ideas and a few changes if I get elected. One of the things I want to do is increase sponsorship through trying to target businesses in April at the start of a new financial year rather than in July, which is when the sports president starts their role, having to get more money in the door, so hopefully we can do more as clubs. Another thing I want to do is try and continue to resolve kit issues through looking at the contract if I can, having some clauses in place, so if you're promised your kit's going to come by a certain date and it doesn't, that you can benefit by getting money back on that. I'm also wanting things like these hoodies available to all people to try and increase more money in the sports union. One of my main things I want to focus on is a sports union app that can be free to download and for all students to have a look at the clubs that are on offer. So then you can see team bios, fixtures, results, when they train, the socials they're having, just so it's a bit less intimidating for new students coming and also current students, so they don't just have to turn up blind to a club. I've actually been in contact with some app developers who've given me a few prototypes of this, which I've put on my Facebook page, which is Anne-Marie Kennerly #1 for VPSW. But yeah, that's kind of the things I want to do. So I'd really appreciate if when voting opens tomorrow, if you could vote Anne-Marie for sports president.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I'm running to be Vice President of Sport and Wellbeing, as you can probably see. First off, I'm a fourth year economics student, and the reason that I want to run for Vice President of Sport and Wellbeing is that I'm passionate about student sport and the student experience in general. The reason you should vote for me is experience. This is my fourth year at university, and during those 4 years, in my first 2 years I was a club captain of a sports club, cricket, which has led me to, I know what sport teams need, I know the problems you go through. Then the following year I was the president, so I know kind of being there in the advisory role where you kind of push people in the right direction without having to be too hands-on. Also the last 2 years I've been on the sports executive, firstly as awards convener, which was got a really good idea of the talent and amazing people that the sports union and the uni in general have in a sporting context. And then this year I've been Vice President Development, so that means that I've been working with the staff and the rest of the executive to advance the sports union through developing clubs and also developing just operational protocols and stuff like that. I'm also the current intern in the sports union, so I've already got a working relationship with the staff, which means that the kind of handover period won't be difficult or time consuming. What I want to do with my year, if I'm elected, is be much more club centred. I think that the sports union is all about clubs, and what we need to do is focus on the individual clubs rather than the sports union as a whole. So work with the clubs, meet with them at the start of the year, have a focused plan that's tailored to them rather than just a general sports union one. Secondly, I want to forgotten what I was going to say, give me a second. I was going to work towards the sports union facilities. Currently the sports union facility, the sports facilities in general for all students doesn't meet our capacity. We've got 20,000 students and that's the size of our gym, just doesn't match up, and there's also sports hall. If you try and get training time as a sports club, it's very difficult unless you've got large numbers, and even then it's still fairly difficult. I also want to work on the wellbeing side. I've been around and I've done lots of volunteering in the kind of wellbeing events. I've had to sit on a smoothie bike, filled up that bike's little thing a fair few times, did laughter yoga, forced people to come along and laugh while doing yoga, which was strange but amazing. I've done a lot, and I just want to make sure that the sports union is left the way it should be, with clubs being ready and future-proofed. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne-Marie and Nick. If anybody has any questions for either of the candidates, you can address them either to one of the candidates or both. So again, just hands up if you want, and the mic will come to you.
Hi, I'm Rosa, Vice President Diversity and Advocacy. Just wanted to ask a question for both candidates. How would you engage with Vice President Diversity for next year and engaging with sports?
Can I just confirm that was how would you engage with the diversity officer to engage more people in sports? Yeah, well, I've actually spoken to quite a few groups already, which have highlighted a few key things that I haven't actually thought about before. Speaking to a lot of international students who are here in Erasmus and that feel that if they're here for just a semester, they're quite in the dark about what goes on at Strathclyde, whereas it'd be really beneficial if we had these students even for a semester in our sports clubs, because they've got such massive talent. Also for postgrads, a lot of them feel that they would benefit from postgraduate come and try sessions specifically for them, as they don't have a lot of free time with their postgraduate. They feel they'd really benefit from that. Also things like a 1-month membership, which is currently an offer to staff but not to students. A lot of postgrads feel that they would utilise that a lot more, and it would be a lot more cost effective if they could pick and choose their months, as a lot of them are away abroad and around Europe for a lot of their studies. So I'd like to really target that, working with a diversity officer to come up with events that could increase their membership.
Hi. I've from playing cricket in general, we actually have a lot of the kind of post-grad international students, and I know that they come along and they feel a wee bit left out, and you have to really engage them. I think that would just help with having almost like working with the diversity, have their groups come along, can work together, have a sports day for them if they wanted. It's just making sure that they don't turn up, not know what to do, and then come to our sports clubs and not really get that engagement. I think it would help just at the start of the year with the diversity or whenever the problem's highlighted, to just have an event between the sports union and with the Vice President Diversity. Right, thanks.
Hello, this question is to both candidates. One of the things I've been quite impressed with the sports union over the years has been things like the Healthy Body, Healthy Minds campaign, bringing more people, giving them more opportunity to sports and recreation from people who might not have been the most obvious people to feel included by this. I'd like to ask you both how you see this programme continuing and how you intend to develop it further.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. My Healthy Body, Healthy Mind campaign this year, I think has been exceptional for, especially this year. I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to the importance of well-being and how being healthy and going to the gym affects you both mentally and with your studies. Studying sports and physical activity, as my degree, we cover a lot of well-being and how important it is for people to be healthy and active. So I feel that I would like to continue on her successes, having a lot more events every month, having a calendar made before the academic year of what's going to happen in each month, so things are planned out, making sure we're targeting a wide range of people. I would also like to focus on the food that's around the university, especially in the library. I feel that in exam time there's not a vast selection of healthy options that students could be having, especially when cafe is shut and there's just vending machines. I feel that we could have a lot more healthy options on campus, which would help students.
I've seen the kind of final days of the Healthy Body, Healthy Mind being set out. I know James's year, I remember seeing them scrambling for it, trying to like make sure that everything gets done, everything's written down. I think all it needs is just a bit more focus on the planning, get them along. I think there's some events, it's trial and error as well. I mean, with the laughter yoga, we basically had a load of staff members and then people that were volunteering already. I just think it needs a bit more publicity, especially the Rock Up Sports Club's a classic example of that. It was pushed out quite hard at the start when I was in my first year or my second year, and then this year it's just not had the publicity that it should do. It maybe just needs a revamp. I mean, it's been around for a while, maybe just different names or more sporting events. I mean, there was super teams when I was in my second year. I thought it was a great one. You didn't have to be part of anything. You just turn up, do a bit of physical activity. I mean, that's part of just being a healthy person, especially when you're at uni. You find that you're going out all the time, you're eating crap food. All you need is a bit of exercise and maybe, like Amory says, some healthier food. I mean, there's the good policy of when it's exam time, you have the handing out the fruit. I think that's great. That should be carried on. Thanks.
Hi, you already mentioned publicity, Nick, but my question was, how important do you think it is to communicate the successes of the sports club to the wider student bodies, and how would you actually help them in communications and in kind of boasting their successes on campus, because I feel like that's something we don't see that often. It's a very enclosed community. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think success breeds success. If you see a team winning, or you see just being successful in general, you're more likely to join. I think there's a media officer that's on the sports exec which gets employed specifically for that. I think it just needs someone to come along and go, this is your schedule every month, you know, to retweet that. I mean, at the moment we've got a big push on with the branding for Glasgow Cup, so I've actually seen a lot more successes out there, seen a lot more pictures, and I think it is exciting to see. I mean, you can go on Facebook now and there's scroll down, you'll see I think the basketball team won their league and are through the next round in the cup, stuff like that. It's good. And I think that if students see that, then they're more likely to come along and it'll boost attendance. It's an overall good thing. But yeah, just better scheduled and more utilisation of that role on the executive.
Was that question just to Nick, or would you like to go with Anne-Marie?
Oh. Yeah, as I said before, one of my main pushes wants to be towards media promotion of our clubs. Yeah, I think there needs to be improved like rules of what the media officer should be doing in the exec, but I also think that we should utilise students who have film and media projects to get them along to the Bucks games so we can have live streams of what we as clubs are getting up to, and it should be recognised that way. Also, as I mentioned before, there's planning for an app so that each club can post virally what they've been up to and their achievements. So I think continuing on what I aim to do in my policy to achieve that.
Hi, sorry, this is for Anne-Marie. Have you actually been in contact with any societies that do the filming? Because we would actually be keen to get involved with that, but there's been little to no contact made so far.
Yeah, I sent emails out to most societies a few weeks ago, just from the society leaflet that's in the union, but I've not really had much response. But I'm aware that you guys are there and have emailed you a few weeks ago because you guys got involved with the PCIS clubs and took videos and pictures of each club to be online for the first class physiotherapy sponsorship. So I do know like you guys would be a great asset if you were keen, and that's something we can progress into next year for live streams and media of clubs. Thanks.
This one's for both of you. Basically, obviously, with sports, winning trophies, winning leagues is a massive part of it. Now I know that there's a trophy cabinet in the sports hall bit, but would you have a more prominent display for that, or because obviously advertising trophies is a massive thing. I presume you both want some. So how would you like your achievements and the achievements of the societies to be displayed?
Yeah, just now there's a trophy cabinet in the sports centre. I don't really feel that could be sort of moved elsewhere until the new building is built. Trophies are important, and I think it probably should be showcased more. But I think the actual fact that the clubs won, how they're doing through social media, should be pushed more instead of just the trophies on show, which they are currently now. So I think it should be more of a push towards the social media side of their achievements, rather than just having flashy trophies dotted about.
Similar sort of thing. I don't think there's not enough room for the amount of trophies that Strathclyde win. I mean, the amount of Bucks leagues that we win, they all come with a trophy. It'd be pretty hard to showcase them all. I mean, I think, again, it's similar to Anne-Marie, it just needs more promotion through social media, the Telegraph, posters. You could have every week the results from the week before, something like that, and special mentions to when it's a big achievement. But the trophy cabinet, I'm not sure that's going to be remedied anytime soon. Cheers.
Hi. At the moment there's 5 Strathclyde officers and then there's going to be 6 next year. But the sports union is in a separate place from where the rest of the exec sit. So what I was going to ask is, how are you going to keep up the relationship with the rest of the exec now that extra seat's getting filled in the main exec elections, and how are you going to work together in different projects?
Yeah, the sports union is in its kind of own separate place compared to the union, and I feel that with an extra member, it might be beneficial, even for one day a week, for the sports president to come through and sit with the rest of the exec officers, so they're making themselves known to other people of the university as well as just the sports union members. Although it is quite important, as a lot of the sports club members go straight into the sports union if they want to contact the sports president on any issues they have or questions. But I feel it would be beneficial to see the sports president's face more around the Students' Association area, just so people can put more of a face to a name.
In terms of that, I mean, I think I'm fairly personable, and it's a 5-yard walk or whatever it is through to see the other exec officers. I think the unique thing about sport is that it's a union with itself, and it needs to be governed from there. But I think if you've got your monthly meetings and just going through and chatting, I think key thing is not to be behind a computer screen emailing you guys rather than just coming over for a chat. I think that'd be the best way to do it, keep it that way.
Okay, if there's no further questions, then we're going to move on to the Vice President's report. Thank you very much again.
Right, guys. Players are already. Some people leaving now. Right, guys. I'm Jerry MacDonald. Like a previous speaker, I'm also a 4-year honours year, history and politics, and this year I'm running for the position of Vice President support. This is a new position, and I think I'm fairly well suited to that position as a result of the different involvement that I've been engaged in my time here in Strathclyde. During my time here, I've been a class rep in both my main subjects in every semester all the way through. I've also been the faculty rep for the HAS faculty. I am presently the intern for the peer support project that's up and running this year, and I'm on the executive committee of the Mature Students Association. I've also held the position of convener of the Mature Students Association for 2 years. So what would I envisage are the problems here with for this job to tackle? There's quite a few problems actually. In my different activities, I've come across quite a lot of problems here that different students from different backgrounds are facing. One of the most important ones is in the area of housing, and that is every year a number of our students are becoming homeless, and there is no emergency cover on this campus to actually cater for that. So if a student is attending here and is from outside the Glasgow area, which is probably the majority actually, there's nowhere for you to go. There is no housing. The homeless shelters will accommodate you if you have a previous postcode inside the Glasgow area. When they actually hear that you are a student, they will not do anything for you. What they'll do is your university should look after you. So when you come back to the campus, there is no emergency accommodation. Okay, you can go to the finance department and look for emergency loans and stuff like that. But you know yourselves, if you're going in to get a loan, you're not going to go out and get a roof over your head that very night. So that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed urgently. As well as that, other aspects for the students that do come here and have some money, you know, the cost of halls is actually, you know, way above what it actually probably could or should be. So I'm going to campaign that there should be no increase in the cost of halls and accommodation like that. Other stuff that I would be campaigning on would be the likes of the peer support project that has started this year. As I said, I'm the intern at the moment. Only last week the new drop-in zone opened down on level 5. Ideally, the way forward for this is that each faculty should have a drop-in zone for the students in the different faculties to go to, and that way we'll be able to expand and extend the peer support right the way across the campus here. Just give me 1 second. I'm sort of, that camera sort of put me off here a wee bit. Funding. Well, you know, we don't all come from you know, rich families and all the rest of it. And there's a lot of people here from disadvantaged areas and everything else. So there is a cost attached to coming to university, as you all know, and one of them would be even books and stuff like that. Some course books, you know, 100 plus quid and stuff like that. So I'll be campaigning for more e-books and that library, and you know, so that all of our students can avail of them at no extra cost. Another thing that I've come across in my time here, in the last 2 years, we've had a wheelchair-bound female student who's here. This is our 2nd year here. Wheelchair-friendly table is what she requested in our lectures. Has she got it? 2 years later? No. Why is that? The people responsible have said, oh, we've got tables for her. Big, cumbersome metal tables that her mentor can't even lift. So the likes of this bureaucratic nonsense needs to be knocked on the head once and for all, and let's sit down, listen to what the problems that our students have, and let's address them in the quickest and best way possible. So thanks for that. Any questions?
There are no questions, and I'll just ask you, why do you think you're the best guy for the job?
Well, I think as I've said, I've had plenty of experience at different things on the campus, different issues and different problems that I've been made aware of. One of them was even a couple of years ago when the Old Mature Student Association over in St. Paul's annex there, just across the road from the union here, was closing down. It didn't seem as if anybody on this campus wanted to keep that open or wanted to rehouse us anywhere. So a couple of us that were inside it at the time decided that we needed a mature student association, and we needed it especially for the students coming in from widening access background, because these guys have been out of the education system for a while and they definitely needed peer support. So campaign was launched. It went on for well over a year, but in actual fact what actually happened was it was very successful, and new premises were given to us by the principal over in Livingston Tower, which opened last August, 12 months. Official opens this Friday at 3 o'clock. If any is around, drop in. Level 2, room 202, you're more than welcome. But that Mature Student Association that opened just over a year and a half ago, this academic year, our numbers with people using it are record numbers for undergrads, record numbers for postgrads, and record numbers for international students. So that has been an absolute success story. As well as that, over there we campaigned when we moved. The security people are actually based there. The security office at the bottom of Livingston Tower. We said to them that we'll be in here. The last one out will lock up, and they said no, the building locks down at 10 o'clock every night and it doesn't open at weekends. And we said, well, that's not exactly the way we view the running of our MSA. So we sat down and we had a number of meetings with them, and we said we need 24-hour access 7 days a week because of the nature of who and what we are. We've got mature students who have family commitments, work commitments, and all of this other stuff that goes with that. And you know, different people have different times that they're able to study, or have a partner to mind kids so they can only get out at weekends to study. So we were successful in that, and we now have red card. We have red card access to Livingston Tower 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the only exception to that was in our first year, when the campus was shut over Christmas. We didn't like that because, you know, there was a lot of people had assignments to put in, you know, over early January. There was other people had exam diets and whatever else. A lot of mature students actually don't study in the library because they're probably too easily distracted. So we sat down with security, went through all the different issues, and we got it sorted, and we now have it. And this Christmas just gone, we at the last day before the campus actually shut, someone in the States sent an email and says that the mature students actually could have access this Christmas to Livingston Tower for the run up to the exam diets and early assignments. And one other thing that just had to remind me of, one of the first year psychology students, a young mother of two young kids. I met her in early January, and I said to her, "Did you have a good Christmas?" And she said to me, "Stop, will you?" She said, I had an extension. She says, "The extension of my assignment was midnight on Boxing Day." Who in their right mind made a decision to give someone an extension until midnight on Boxing Day? Do they not think people have a life? It's not as if the marker is going to be sitting at the other end of the computer at midnight going to mark this stuff. This young girl, or young mother as I say, what she had to do was, on Christmas Day after her Christmas dinner, she had to get her partner to go to his mother's with the two kids. She also had to get the partner to go back there again all day Boxing Day so she could get this assignment done, because she was the first year and she was panicking about meeting the midnight deadline. So that'll be another thing that I'll be campaigning about. It's to sit down with the powers that be and, you know, cut out all this madness, bureaucratic nonsense that goes on in this place, and just put a little bit of foresight into what you are actually expecting people to do. And you know, by sitting down and talking, I'm sure we can sort out most of the problems that are actually affecting our students.
So that was Jerry McDonald, thank you very much. Next up we've got the Vice President of Volunteering and Development, and it's Kyle Henry who's going to speak to us.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kyle Henry and I'm running to be the Vice President of Volunteering and Development. First things first, it's the worst acronym of all time, VPVD. I would like to thank my campaign team for the Progressed Umbrella campaign, and I really hope the new name catches on. But on a serious note, I am the best person for this job. I volunteered for the last 6 years. Embarrassingly enough, this year I've led RAG to raise over £20,000 and counting. We are about to break records there. I'm an expert actor, I've done a lot of shows in React, and not only that, I am a competition dancer with SADS. Thanks to them for letting me join in. I do talk quite strongly about arts-based societies at Strathclyde, because I do remember when the music and other arts courses got cut, and the student union should be about the students, and I feel that that's something that has not been done as well as could be. But I want to focus on every single club in society. We now have over 130. The fact that I'm standing here unopposed is ridiculous in my point. Every person from president, treasurer for every society should be thinking of running. That's over 260 people. Why am I the only one? I know Michael said it, a few other people said it. Students feel uninterested in the union. I've been known as the guy that drinks in the union. I feel uninterested. Students come up to me going, Kyle, it's not as good as it once was, and I will bring it back, because what we need to do is, this student union is for the students. Times have changed. There's no way we could have done what we did 6-7 years ago. The students don't want that. Students are more likely to spend time in Starbucks than Barney Bar, and it needs to be addressed. Barney Bar should change. I know if you're a club society, Vertigo is the #1 spot to go, and we can't book that for so many clubs, and it's disappointing, and it's stopping the growth of certain clubs and societies, and I really don't want that. What really annoys me as well is when I'm down in England at conferences and stuff, English students don't know where Strathclyde is. They don't even know what's in Glasgow. I think that's ridiculous. Strathclyde has done so well in club societies. Like, I know the base won trophies in Europe. SADS have done well in national competitions. There's loads more that I've not been able to get around because there is so many clubs and societies. But this is the year most clubs and societies have been there, but yet there's still this uninterest. Why is that? I will say now, you'll never see me on Facebook taking a selfie of beer. Sorry, guy. I don't have Twitter, I don't have Snapchat. Social media to me is a myth. I've got an old Nokia that doesn't have internet, because I believe in this: FaceTime, one-to-one communication. I'll go out there and speak to the students. Oh, you're not interested? Well, I'm here to find out why. I'm Kyle Henry, and you should vote me VPVD #1.
Any questions?
Hi. Kyle. You focus very highly on clubs and societies, but as you well know, the role changed this year. You've not mentioned anything about any of the environmental or ethical stuff that's getting put in your role, whether in your manifesto or your video or just now, and also about all the other volunteer opportunities such as community engagement. That's not been mentioned either.
Thanks for bringing that up. I think those are new roles that have been put in that, through my experience, have not been so involved in, so I decided to focus more on club societies. For the environment, me personally, I'm a minimalist, and I don't believe in all these papers like you've seen papers for posters. Maybe next year it'll be a paperless election and stuff. And so what was the other points?
What are you going to do about them? Like, environmental and ethical issues are now in the remit, and how are you going to adapt that to the union's policies and stuff?
I think in the same way I address the needs of clubs and societies, the environment is definitely the #1 issue. I know ethically we do not support Nestle because of their operations. There's probably a lot more other organisations that are doing really bad stuff, and we should be looking into that as well.
Hi, you briefly mentioned sort of Barney Bar and trying to get more people in and more people interested. Like, I'm nearing the end of my 4th year now, and as far as I can remember, people have promised that every year, and if anything, it's gotten less popular. What's the plan there?
I completely agree with you, and the reason why it's not done well is because we've had so many elections. I'll get Barney back and get people in drinking. Is that the best resource Barney could be, or could it be, say, during the week, like Monday to Thursday, as a bookable space? Because it's massive. You could easily get like 2 club sizes in there. We've done it last week even for Rugby. So it's more of that. It's not the drinking culture's completely changed. Students have completely changed since I've been here, and I know that I'm probably not like them because I'm one of the older people that drinks, but being elected to the position, I have to stand up for them and say this is what the students need, this is what clubs and societies need, and put my own interests to bed, essentially.
You can't put bad into
You can. I've been around a few clubs and societies, and one of the things they've said is booking is really difficult. So one of the things I'd like to see I don't know if it's possible, but on strathstudents.com, if we had what had been booked that day, so students can plan ahead. Because I know, like the sports teams were mentioning, an agenda for the month, but we don't have that at the moment. Because you have to come and book it with Lisa and Susan, and sometimes I know for RAG we've had last minute events that we can't do because rooms haven't been available. Maybe that's our fault for not being forward thinking enough, but some of the best ideas were done off the cuff.
You haven't mentioned what kind of changes you're going to make to bar and bar apart from booking pay, but how would you actually make those changes?
As a booking space?
Or any other changes to Cardiff Garden, or I don't know if there's any funding?
At the moment I know there is plans for a new student union, but that's been looking at like 2025 and now, and that's been pushed back. Like there's many plans years ago, and the sports union will know what I'm talking about because their sports union has been pushed back. I think it's really dark. Like I know the Yard got massive investment, and that's been breaking records at the bars because it's a light place people want to go. What Barn used to be was a dingy old mucky place that was for students, but students don't want that. So what do they want? To be better using it for that. So student societies that want to rehearse, like say dancing or cheer at Warriors or any others.
I just want to ask, as a Vice President Diversity, how would you engage with the Vice President Diversity, and how, as the Liberation Group basically comes under clubs and societies and the Vice President of Diversity, so it's very complicated. How would you address that, and how would you engage and work having a good relationship with the Vice President of Diversity?
Yeah, I would even go as further say that I should be having a good relationship with every exec member. I've worked with yourself on a few things. We've got a thing coming up with SWAN, the Women's Action Network, to get a pub quiz raised. That's one thing I've done. We also did a few things with sports, with like the University Boob Team for breast cancer awareness. So it's something I have experience of, and I'd like to push those things further from my involvement in RAG, the charity side, and more the well-being, something more maybe a lot of people might not have, but that's something I can easily push, and I've got experience in doing it.
What are you going to do to encourage more students to form and join more societies? Because just going up to students in the street can be quite terrifying for them.
Well, I mean, fair enough, a lot of people don't like beards, but you know, one of the things we could easily start with is welcome team. That stops after first week, but why? Because a lot of them get involved. Why can't we have an ongoing welcome team combined with the PR and say, hey, we've got this going on? I can't remember the last time I've seen a union PR coming into lecture or about, really. I mean, I'm sure they are busy, but it's that kind of thing where you're going to have to do something because everyone's on Twitter, everyone's on Vines, and there's no communication. If they knew what we had on, that is really hard to do.
Well, what are you going to do?
Well, I don't think I'd rest. I'd be around lectures saying this is what we've got on. Some, like obviously I'm here to help some societies, but at the end of the day I can only do so much, and they need to want more students involved. Some work in very different ways. So like SUDS work in a very different way than RAG do, than say like Strath TV works in a very different way. But you need to apply that to each club and society to create the best solution for the union.
So in previous years, your role has kind of also included a lot on employability as part of the development remit. So do you have any policies in that area?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is now the second year of STAR Skills, which includes an excellent of progressing and was set up by Josh. But as far as I'm aware, I've not been able to attend them because I've got SUDS. Not all of them offer graduate roles. So why are we getting those companies to come in and say, oh, this is how to get a job. Oh, you can't get a job with us. So I'd look at specifically getting jobs, and then in different sectors, because I know business from my experience as being an accountancy student, PwC, Deloitte advertise very heavily, but is Haas recognised in the same way? I'm not so sure.
That's why we brought those companies in. Not everyone wants a graduate scheme.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the final candidates, and that's the candidates for the president. So can Gary Patterson and Ryan Ross please come forward? And we're going to do it in the same format, 5 minutes each. Gary first, followed by Ryan, and then again questions can be addressed either to both candidates or one of them. Gary.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming along then. I'm Gary Patterson, I'm your current president, I'm running for re-election. This past year I set out to achieve some really ambitious goals, setting up a crisis fund for students, reshaping student facilities on campus and in halls, creating new living wage jobs and internships for students, whilst abolishing 0-hour contracts, and setting up a student welfare campaign. I've achieved everything that I promised last year and more, winning over £100,000 of investment into students and our campus. But our successes aside, I think there's still more we need to do, and there's more that I want to do. So I believe in an education system that's accessible, supportive and barrierless. But we're not there yet, because when students can't afford to go on exchange, or when postgrads struggle without funding, and when students can't even be able to afford to get involved in extracurricular activities, there is a problem, and that's why the student union is here. I think this past year I've shown how we can tackle the issues, set the agenda on campus and beyond, and make serious wins for students. But the fight isn't over, and I haven't run out of ideas or ambition. So I want to see changes to our union, first of all, by setting aside dedicated funding and staff support to help grow our campaigning and student media groups. I want our services to be much more student-led, so that we're setting the agenda together with all students, and I want to see more support to encourage students to lead and shape our union. But as student union president, my job isn't just to run the union. I'm here to fight to improve your rights across the whole campus and beyond. So I want to make sure that we keep doing the work that we've been doing around funding and support, and taking that further than we've been before. I want more crisis funding for international students. I want to increase the stuff that we've done already with the crisis funds. I want to create new funds that open up access to opportunities and development, with support to access to extracurricular activities and academic opportunities. And there's a simple reason for that. I think that when employers are looking for more than just a degree, they're looking at the extracurricular stuff that you do throughout university. I think the university should provide some support towards that, so that all students can access opportunities and develop their futures. So finally, I want to do more to support our students on and off campus. We're going to continue the fight to improve hall standards, demand more bed space, and fight to ensure that we keep halls affordable. I've not been approached by the uni yet about the annual 5% increase that they always ask of the president, but I won't be accepting it this year, and I won't be going for it even next year. I think we need to do a bit more work as well to support affordable and acceptable accommodation, not just on campus but across the city. I'd say we're not finished with the work that we've set out to do on campus facilities. We've had massive wins in that area, but I think we've got a lot of issues with students trying to access support services like counselling support services, and even just for students who are studying out of hours. We need a campus and an education that fits the needs for students and goes beyond a simple 9 to 5. So those are my plans, and that's my record. I genuinely believe this is not about the person, but it's about the work that we want to do and what we've achieved. No matter what happens this week, I'm genuinely proud of the work that we've achieved, and I couldn't have done it without your support. So I hope you could support me again, and we could take forward bigger plans and hopes for the future. So for a supportive and accessible student experience, please vote Gary Patterson #1. Cheers.
Hi there everyone, I'm Ryan Ross and I want to be your president next year. I think taking it as highest, the union is an absolutely incredible thing. I would accredit it with a lot of the friends that I've made in this room, including I hope Gary. I would accredit it for the incredible impact it has on the community, whether it's schemes like Strathclyde's or Elite 2014, where Strathclyde graduates go into the community and help people. And I'd accredit it for the amazing student experiences Strathclyde has. That's the reason I'm here, and I'm sure it's the reason that a lot of you are here. We know that maybe in the traditional Russell Group sort of statistics, we might not be traditionally the best, but in terms of quality of education and in terms of student experience, we definitely are, because we give our students the best experience of any university in Scotland, and we know this, and our student union is famous. However, there is a problem, and it's engagement across all of the things that I've just said. As things stand, volunteering numbers are not as high as we'd like them to be, our bars are empty, and our student community is withering. The very community that made people famous, I'm sure all of you, when you said you were coming to Strathclyde, had a relative or a family friend or a teacher that said, oh, I'm quite envious of you. I hear they have the best parties. I hear they've got the best union. I hear they've got the best graduate job opportunities. I hear they've got the best opportunities. And I just don't believe that's true anymore. We can point to unions like Dundee, which do better than us. We can point to unions like Edinburgh, Heriot Watt, and Glasgow, which even Glasgow, the dreaded Glasgow, does actually maybe outperform us on a lot of metrics now. And I think that's got to change. It's got to change by getting students more involved. So, how do we intend to do this? Well, first of all, look at the social spaces. Barony. We've heard a lot about Barony today, and a lot of people have said, well, why is Barony underperforming? There is no answer to Barony. The unfortunate answer is Glasgow City Council has made licensing a lot easier, and therefore there's a lot more competition for it. But we can do some things. Our bars don't aim to make profits, they aim to give a good experience. We can be moral, as in with regards to people coming in through the door, no mistreatment, because we're an ethical organisation. We can lower the cost of drinks. We're not aiming to make a profit. We're aiming to provide a good social space and a good experience. We are a student union. We can, with regards to volunteering, expand our message, get it in the community, get people more involved. We can make it more fun. One of my ideas on my manifesto is to invite more people in to DJ. Barony is a barren space, funnily enough. Maybe the name has some sort of impact on that. I think that by inviting students to DJ, I'm sure we all know people that mix music a lot and invite us to like their stuff on Facebook an awful lot as well, but they'd be more than willing to use the space. They'd get their friends along. I know people that do it for clubs in the Merchant City, quite frankly awful clubs. I've been to them, they're pretty boring. We could get people in to Barony. It's a lot better experience, cheaper drinks. They could mix their music using proper DJ decks, which we own, and we could do better like that. With regards to student support, obviously it's the job of the President to continue to support the student experience at Strathclyde. We should continue to get above inflation increases in SAS. A student should not have to work. A student is here to develop their future, to enhance their earning power in later life, and to improve their life skills. This idea that SAS can pay, what is it, at the very most $7,500 a year is just not adequate. Even if, assuming someone works full-time over summer, they're still earning a poverty wage, they're still struggling. We need to end that. We need to take the pressure off students. We also need to further overcome the student union disconnect. Unfortunately, I do think that because so few people are interested, the union can become a bit cliquish. It can become a bit difficult for outsiders to come in to join in with the stuff that the union does. Sometimes it's not well publicised, sometimes it's well known about. It's sort of a vicious cycle where, because there is a lack of awareness of what the union does, there becomes a lack of interest in the union, which makes it more difficult for people to come along. I'm an outside face. I'm a fresh point of view. Sorry for that. I'll come in and I hope that I'll be able to sort of get some more fresh faces involved and get some more people involved. And also that sort of stems from also the sort of social space argument and the social aspect. If we have more people in looking at posters, seeing the opportunities that they have as Strathclyde students, we can naturally increase volunteering, which obviously does amazing social goods. We can increase engagement with things that maybe enhance people's CVs, their employability, and we can enhance the student experience at Strathclyde. As things stand as well, I think a lot of money is wasted by the union. We provide pieces at every meeting, which, to be quite frank, laughs at the health goals that we have and wastes an incredible amount of money. As things stand, Barony uses $50,000 a year and the catering budget is huge. Meanwhile, clubs that want to go on trips, I'm sure sports clubs as well, you'll know this, funding can be quite tight unless you're an elite athlete. I think if we really batten the hatches, maybe reduce the thermostat 2 degrees, and look at what we're spending more, we could provide more opportunities for students and better the student experience at Strathclyde. I think I'm out of time. Thanks for your time keeping, but thanks for listening, everyone. And Ryan Ross is the one to come tomorrow.
Hi, this is for both candidates. Can you tell me how you're going to work with your VPs?
Okay, yeah, so this year we've done a lot of work trying to do collective responsibility within the Student Association. I think there used to be a bit of a pyramid structure where the president was kind of in charge and the other vice presidents kind of had to take a steer from the president. We've done a lot of work changing that, whether it be from how SABs can get their toil on holiday, instead of coming to me now they can go to other SABs and get led. And we try to go for consensus quite a lot within the executive committee. So I fundamentally believe that's the way forward. I just don't see how, for example, if James got the same number of votes as me, how I could be telling him what to do. Like, we're a team together, we're all elected together, and we all need to work together. So I've done that last year, I'll continue doing that next year.
I mean, it's a pretty broad question, so I'll sort of tackle it position by position. So with regards to education, education is the reason that we're all here, and I do think that, like you said in your speech, there's a lot of things to do with education that needs to be improved, and also Jerry touched upon it as well. Ridiculous, arbitrary deadline submissions. I'm sure, we know it in our department as well, in chemical engineering, where issues with regards to submitting a draft but not submitting a final copy means that your thing gets marked 0, even if you couldn't possibly change the draft, and even if they weren't getting marked. It is just a thing that is arbitrary and wrong. So we need to work together to improve educational standards. Obviously the president stands as a sort of overarching figure for the whole organisation, and therefore I suppose is kind of responsible for each of the positions that's underneath him. With regards to support, again, it's generally a similar story. I think it's all about supporting the ambitions of the people in those positions and working with them, because you all raised a lot of good points. I think that by working more as a cabinet and less as, I think the word president is sort of quite a negative thing. It's sort of like very executive and overarching. I think it needs to be seen as more of a cabinet structure where we're all working together for a common goal with sort of someone in the centre to coordinate. With regards to sports and clubs, I think you can sort of lump them together in that they are sort of broadly, they generally look after themselves. It's about fighting for the interests of your groups and making sure that with sports things run smoothly. I wouldn't presume to tell the sports union how to run things, and I would presume to tell clubs and societies how to run things. And it is just generally a support thing, and it's about being able to use the power, the campaigning power of the president to support those two roles. And diversity, of course, as well, I think is a particularly important one. Diversity strikes to everything that happens at Strathclyde. And as a gay male studying at Strathclyde, studying engineering, I can sort of appreciate that sometimes things are quite difficult, and I would definitely love to work with whoever, well, probably Raj, unless there's some sort of major upset, but I'd love to work with Raj to sort of improve the student experience at Strathclyde, because I know for a fact it could be better.
Yeah, I'm James, Vice President of Education. This is directed to Ryan. It's just something in your manifesto. We talked about making the university support services more unified. That's obviously something that's quite close to me, because I worked alongside Gary and the rest of the executive last year on kind of student welfare. So at the moment, all the kind of university support services are line managed in one department. So that's the counselling, study skills, math skills, student advice, the hardship fund. They're all in one single university department. So you were saying that you want to unify it. How do you think you could unify it more?
Sorry, I think that might have been me being ambiguous in my manifesto. I meant like all support services. So you're talking about educational support services, but I was talking about more generally, maybe expanding that into, say, the services to do with emergency loans that the university provides towards people that are poor. Maybe government services that to do with things like homelessness, and then also to expand that in with education, because I think it's one of those things that where someone is in trouble, it's rarely an isolated thing where you can say, oh, it's an educational problem, or oh, it's a family problem. It's like a family problem will cause an educational problem, which will cause a financial problem, and it was I wanted to see all those things, not just working closely together, but in one room in the university where you get them all, whether it's a union room or not, but provided by the union in a central place that's easy to access.
Because all those services you just mentioned, they are actually all together, the financial stuff, the academic stuff, they're all in
well, no, because you need to go to the council building for an emergency loan, for instance, whereas if you had a sort of sexual health issue, you'd go to a room in the union, and if you had a problem with an academic thing, then you'd look to the relevant department. I think the rooms in Livingston Tower, for instance, for maths, so I wouldn't say they weren't necessarily unified.
Geographically, they're separate, but they're in the one university department, and they're all line managed by the same person, and they have team meetings on a monthly, weekly basis. So that's a geographic issue.
As I understand, I don't think that it's unified enough were, for instance, a problem. I don't think if you went to get extra help with maths because you're really struggling, if necessary, that would ring the sufficient alarm bells to then say to someone, oh, maybe this person's also financially struggling and there's a risk of homelessness or drug abuse, or maybe this person's, I think that it could do a lot better, and it does fail as things stand. Because I know that people do go for financial support, for instance, and they're not even referred to academic support, which I would say is a pretty obvious thing to do, because I know for a fact that some people do suffer from academic issues when they're getting financial issues. And as I say, as they've not been referred, I can only assume that there isn't that degree. If it is, then it would be a case of making it work better, because I don't think it works sufficiently just now.
Sorry, this is for Ryan again, I'm really sorry, just because you mentioned clubs and societies. I'll ask you a question later, maybe, Gary. Just because you said that you're not going to tell the VP, VD what to do and stuff like that, you're not going to tread on each other's toes. However, in your speech you mentioned about clubs and societies. Oh, hello. You mentioned about clubs and societies and having more support for them. At the moment we've got £30,000 for clubs and societies, and also in the strategic plan there is a participation fund.
Well, I can answer that in one number. At the moment, Barony loses 50,000 a year.
I wasn't finished my question.
Sorry, it is just the scale of the losses is 140% of the losses of 140% of the loss that Barony makes is Barony makes 140% losses what your budget is per year is basically what I'm saying.
No, that's not what my question was. My question was, I know that from all those meetings that I go to, but my question was, what else are you going to do for clubs and societies, since you say you want more support for them as well?
Well, I mean, I'm literally telling you a concrete way that I would personally provide more funding towards it. For instance, unfortunately, it's just the case of Barony was just shut down just now. You could say 50,000 a year. I think it is salvageable, but that's definitely a way. By more than doubling, by increasing the budget of sports and societies by more than 140%, I think quite clearly you could benefit them an awful lot. I think as well, for instance, I know I'm involved with Strathclyde. I was their social convener last year. The room booking system is somewhat of a joke. I'm sorry to some people that are in the room who maybe know the person that does the room booking, but there's stories where people would have an email confirmation that they booked a room, turn up to the room, and it wasn't. Because they promised it to someone else. It's shambolic. I think that if you were to make room booking easier, it's just about making things easier. You cannot entice someone to get out of their bed and go to a club and society. It's just not a thing that we'll ever be able to achieve. But if someone is willing to, we can make the room booking easier, we can make the financing easier, I just think it's all the little things that will add up to.
I get all that, but that wasn't what my original question was. You said you weren't going to step on the other VP's toes, so what I'm saying is...
Well, I'd assume if I said to Kyle Henry, and I'm sure you could answer just now, I want to help you make room booking easier and provide you with more funding, and he was willing to accept it and work with me to do that, then that would be awesome, and I would completely accept that. And if Kyle Henry honestly said, you know what, I like the room booking system as shambolic as it is, and I'd quite like my budget to be less than half of what it could be, then I would respect that, because he's got more of a mandate with regards to clubs and societies than I do.
Hi there, Brian. You might as well stay there. This one's for you as well. I've actually got another one which we could both be potentially later, but the main thing is, you talked about the union not being for profit, and then you're talking about taking the pressure off students. If you're not trying to make a profit from the union, then you're actually, straight away, you're losing money there that could then be used to take the pressure off students. I would like you to have the chance to kind of explain quite how that marries up.
It does, because well, first of all, the union gets a £1.5 million a year block grant from the university, which a lot of people don't realise. It works out about £50 per student. So that isn't money that the union makes. A lot of, you might wrongly, so the commercial operators of the union make nothing, really, in the context of quite a huge budget. I mean, turnover wise it's 5 million, but profit wise it's nothing. So I think that because of that, most of the money, for instance, clubs and societies get 30,000 out of £1.5 million. So, it's sort of because the businesses lose money, and I'm sure our economics friend will tell us if we lower the price of drinks, we would sell more drinks, and at a lower profit per drink, we wouldn't actually lose that much, but we provide more for enticing social space to people. I mean, that's just sort of the general opinion. I don't think it's necessarily contradictory to say. I wouldn't agree that it's necessarily detrimental to the student experience to focus on the commercial aspects of the union either.
Can I just can I interject here? Can we ask the questions? There's been 3 questions now in a row for one candidate. Can we ask the questions are aimed at both candidates, just to give a chance for both people to speak. And also, when you're asking questions, can you make sure you ask the full question and there isn't a conversation going back and forth? Is that okay? So ask a question, then the candidate gets given the chance to answer the question, and then we move on to the next question. Thank you.
I have a few questions, but one question for both candidates is how would you improve sports at the university? How do you improve that?
Okay, cool. So I sit on University Court, and one of the first decisions we made this year was look at who would be best placed to sit in court with me, and it was quite obvious that would be Mary because of the developments that are going to happen around the sports building. So we're not quite there yet, and if I'm elected, hopefully I'm working with one of you two guys next year. We need to do a massive push on that, not just for the sports building, but the student union building, for example, as well, is something that Youth Residents have been working on for about 10 years now, so it'll be good to kind of get some progress on those areas. Cheers.
I mean, I think it's got to entail working with the next sports president and a lot of what they want to achieve. Obviously, I mean, I'm sort of echoing what we have heard. The problems are to do with room availability and they're to do with funding. And unfortunately, I think that the university has expanded an awful lot since we got the facilities for sport. And it's quite simply just a question of overcapacity. Obviously, we're going to have a building in Rotten Row pretty soon, so which should obviously, hopefully, cater better to what students need sports-wise. But in the meanwhile, I suppose all we can do is try best to fund sports and to encourage people who maybe aren't the likeliest to do sports to sports, because I mean, when you've got a large proportion of people that maybe haven't done sport at school, that's a large talent base that you've not exploited, and there could be, you know, the best athletes in the world among people that are disengaged just now. So I would try to get more people like that engaged personally.
I just want to ask you both in a bit more detail about what your policies are with the bars. I mean, you said, Ryan, that you want to get the drinks cheaper and start making money, but every year I've been in Strathclyde, the candidate for president has said that they're going to make the drinks cheaper and they're going to make money, and they never have made money. How are you going to succeed where all the other candidates have failed and where all the professional, highly paid managers in the union who've been working for years have failed? You also say that you want to compete with Merchant City bars where students are playing, but for example, the Cheetah bar in Merchant City where students are playing, they have thousands of pounds worth of gear, they've got a bespoke function, one speaker system. That's like, the staff think that to get the Barony to be a half decent bar you would need £250,000 of funding. Where are you going to get that funding to kickstart the bars? And why do you think that you can make a profit in a year, so much profit in a year that you can start funding societies more? And Gary, you didn't say anything about your strategy for the bars, so maybe you could expand a wee bit on that.
Cool, yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys know that I'm into my beer, so I can give you a little bit of an insight on that front. We actually sell the most tenants in the city centre because we've got 4 taps of it, but we also have one of the cheapest pints of tenants in the city as well. So for me, I'm also a bit of a use of history buff as well. We've done the 50th anniversary. I was looking at manifestos from 20 years back, and there's always someone that's talking about kind of lowering prices. And for me, I think that we need to do a bit more work with students actually taking the lead in our commercial services. I've had a few ideas myself, and a lot of the time it's me kind of going into a room and having a chat with someone. If I really want to get a cask beer on, or we decide to bring in Brewdog, it's kind of a bit of a debate between me and another person. What would be better is that if, for example, Connor, you really love strawberry milkshakes and you want that up in the yards, at the moment I think it's not really useful that you just come to me and then I go off and try and have a big debate with someone. I really want to see like students actually leading and shaping our services, and that's not just trying to broaden out the options of food and drink that we've got, but actually the running of the services as well. It should be more of a linkage to the student officers and students who use the services. I think we kind of lost that when we got rid of the vice president services, and it was kind of incorporated into the president's role, but there was never anything there that was linked into the people that were using the service. So moving forward, that has to be a big strategy. In terms of the investment, we're still paying off the investment for the yard, because we actually come out of our reserves, and it's still going to be a good couple of years until then. The yard costs an absolute bucket load of money to actually refurbish, and it's much smaller than the Barney bar. So we'd have to have a real serious conversation. I don't think we can have that conversation in an election that's clearly so uncontested and there's hardly any students that are probably going to be voting in it. I think we need to have a wider consultation with students throughout the year to talk about what they want out of their services within the student union. I hope one way of doing that is getting more students involved in shaping the services. Does that answer your question? Fine.
With regards to the thing I was saying about getting people into DJ and giving them like DJ decks, I actually worked in a nightclub and a bar in Edinburgh I supervised, and a good set of DJ decks costs about £3,000, and for someone that mixes music you can apparently tell the difference, and they're really amazing cues, and I'm pretty sure we have them. We do have them, most clubs and bars have them, and it's like, in your house you could not possibly afford that, especially as a student, you just couldn't afford that, and it's more by giving people the availability to do that, and by allowing them to invite their friends into the union, it's sort of a good money making opportunity for us, and it's an opportunity that we've not exploited yet, and we've not even tried exploiting yet, but a lot of clubs in the American city do exploit, and their drinks are obviously a lot more expensive than our drinks, so I'd imagine we're a better proposition, and we're also a lot closer to where most people go to university. But also with regards to the drink prices, obviously you do have to remember that we are, most places that buy alcohol are locked into pricing agreements, but you sort of do have to, it is a fight, it's not something that you can sort of promise whimsically as like a footnote. I mean, it sounds really stereotypical, but low drinks prices does actually have benefits. It gets more people in, it creates more of a sense of community, and I'd imagine it would create higher volumes of trade and hence higher profits or lower losses than we're experiencing now. And it's something that I, as a drinker, passionately was fighting for, but that's just sort of...
But we're already cheaper than any of the alternatives.
We're honestly, that's just not true, and I know that we charge...
Can we get the next question now? Sorry.
Oh, sorry, are we moving on?
Yeah.
Could I just have 1 second? 15 seconds? Just, in the clubs, in Bamboo on a Saturday and a Friday night, you can get vodkas for like $1.50. You'll never get one for cheaper than that here anymore. It would seem there's places where you can get a pint of Tennent's for £2. I suppose that kind of matches us. A wider selection. You can get Bombay Sapphire for £1 on Bamboos on Sunday nights. You don't even sell it here, but sorry. Can't resist.
Hi there, both of you again. It's been alluded to quite a lot, I think, over the course of questions, is people promising stuff in the manifestos and it not being delivered on. Now, I've spoken to people whilst helping folk campaign, and they're not looking at manifestos anymore because they don't believe what's on them. I know Gary, you've also put on your manifesto about how you've answered promises, but how are you going to increase that advertising that the promises are being made, and how are you getting people to put their trust back in the electoral system?
I think that's a great question. One of my kind of thoughts coming into this role was that, for example, there's students that are doing campaigning on campus, there's students that are being involved in making change, but for some reason they weren't thinking that the student association is the place to go and make that change, which is a tragedy. I don't think we've actually fixed that just yet, but we start to see more of an uptake in the actual kind of students getting involved in making change on campus. One of the things that I think is key to that is communicating your successes. We had a lot of chat about that from the sports candidates. I totally agree. I don't know if any of you guys seen what I put up near the end of last year, but I took my manifesto and I referred to each of the commitments that I made. And I think there needs to be a way of actually kind of codifying that a little bit more, so that it's not just a kind of whimsical thing of doing that. Hopefully with the new constitution that we've passed, we've got an accountability committee, which will actually be students who are kind of randomised to sit and look at the SAB's work and check to see that we're actually doing what we were saying we're doing. But absolutely, I want more people to come to the union and get involved in using the union as a tool to make change, because that's what we are, a union, we have it in our name. But that's not going to happen if we don't advertise our successes and talk about the stuff that we're doing. We've launched tons more campaigns than we've had years previously. We're up for 5 out of 7 NUS awards that we could win this year, which is absolutely amazing. But that's all happening because we're showing more of a force on things like campaigns and being more visible, and we're already doing really amazingly on things like volunteering, and that's some of the best in the country. So really communicating your successes and making sure that we're linking back to the students who elect us, hopefully through the accountability committee we do that. Thanks.
I would just like to say, it's sort of one of the lamentable things about the nature of student politics, I think, that unfortunately there is no concrete cast iron way of guaranteeing that you can fulfill your manifesto requirements. You know, any sort of student of democracy will know that the way in which that traditionally happens are things like protests and campaigns, but the student body is disengaged or not re-electing people, but unfortunately due to the very limited nature of the election cycle, that's just not a possibility either. All I can do is the best way to promise or to show how you're going to fulfill a campaign is to set out exactly how you're going to do something and to attack it with vigour and enthusiasm, which I can promise that I would do. I've got a track record sort of volunteering before as a social convener of Strathclyde, running stuff before, as I can say on like the questions going back to, I know will probably kill me, but going back to the sort of commercial operations of the union, I supervised the bar. So that's really all I can sort of promise, but I will do my best and I will fulfill every manifesto pledge that I've made, because I do think that they're all achievable and I do think that we can do a lot better.
Can we take the next three questions all in a row and then answer them all in a row? So if you listen to the next three questions before you answer them, you can answer them all together.
Okay, just a little bit of clarification. First, you say you're going to increase clubs' budget, but clubs actually underspent last year, and that's a 30 grand budget. That's a lot of money, and you can't force people to submit grant applications just to use up the money. So my real question is, what do the candidates want to do to appeal to more students coming to the union beyond Barony? So ignoring Barony, the second floor doesn't exist.
Thank you. There's been a lot of talk about bars. How does that fit in with students nowadays and their well-being? Because if you drive down prices of drinks, surely students will just go, oh, we'll just go off to Tesco's and buy a £2 bottle of Frosty Jacks.
In your, this is for Ryan, because on his election video he said we don't want the union to be political and we should not ban Nestle products, and I was a bit confused on that.
Okay, to test my memory, I will work back in reverse order. So I'll start with the Nestle thing. That was a little bit of a mistake, because I do believe it, but I don't believe it as strongly as I believe it came across. I think that one thing you've got to understand is, for instance, a lot of companies have got like quite sort of negative connotations to them. And my point kind of was, I think it's very arbitrary to select one. So for instance, we sell Smirnoff in the bars, but Smirnoff is from Russia. And then there's all sorts of, you know, you're on a political level. I know a lot of bars that I've worked in have refused ethically to stock that product. And I think that a lot of companies do have ethical issues. And I do think that maybe like Nestle did a lot to sort of counterbalance the bad that they did. They've spent a lot on the communities, and I don't really believe the ethical issues are anymore. And it was just sort of a point that I think that sometimes it can be sort of a bit random and arbitrary to select one particular like actor. As with regards to Kelsey, I would take your point on completely, and I've always thought it's much better to have people drinking in bars than it is for them to be drinking in their own house, which is why I think it is a bit absurd that sort of the whole structure of society actually encourages drinking at home, because you can go to Tesco and get a free pen bottle of Frosty Jacks with the number of units that you'd have to spend over £100 in a city centre bar where there's someone looking out to make sure that you're not drinking too much. And with regards to Claire's point as to the pretending Barney doesn't exist, Barney disappears, how to get more people involved in clubs and societies. Like I said, it's to do with just making things
just involved on any level.
And any level of the union.
Just coming into the union doesn't have to be clubs and societies.
And I really liked Cal's idea of expanding Welcome Team. I know I did Welcome Team, I know a lot of people did Welcome Team, I've got a lot of good friends from Welcome Team, and that is definitely a resource to exploit in terms of getting new volunteers into the union and getting people to volunteer and engage more. I think that things like room bookings are something that could definitely be improved on a sort of smaller scale. Advertising better as well. I think that it should be, more prominently advertised what clubs there are, where they are. Maybe they should be mentioned in emails. I know that the Freshers Fair exists. There should probably be more things throughout the year to entice people. And I've also thought there maybe should be a link specifically with courses, where there's a lot more societies advertised with regards to courses, or departments sending out emails as to what's going on where, especially when the societies are sort of developmental or charity based. Like, I've never once had an invitation to go along to a rag thing from my department, but it is the university's raising and giving, it's its charitable department. I don't understand why I've never been sent an email from my department, because obviously I have missed a few events. I missed the donut run this year, which I was quite gutted about personally. So that's how I get people more involved.
I'm going to start this response with a question. If there's anybody here that's not a SAB, on a campaign team, or work in the union or student media, could you put your hand up? So, remember Andy, you're neutral. The problem is we kind of talk to ourselves and we play to ourselves. We don't actually reach the 22,000 students on campus. We couldn't fit 22,000 students in the building for a start. But I think we have to do a lot more work around how we're communicating with our students. We have to do a lot more stuff to actually bring students into union. So, I'm not going to rehash all the stuff that I've talked about around funding for campaign stuff and some of the kind of more accessible elections. But I do think that we need to work as an organisation to actually try and communicate more to students, and Hustings is a perfect example. Even last year when I was running, the Hustings were it was just campaign teams, and if we have them again next year, I fully expect that would be the case unless something seriously happens. We have this massive engagement in Freshers. We had the biggest Freshers this year, we sold it out faster than ever, but we're not keeping people in the door after that, so we do need to do some serious work around that. And again, I don't think it should just be down to 5 or 6 officers. It needs to be actually us working with students, the students that elect us. In terms of the reducing prices, my main concern is not about putting money into the union's pockets, it's about putting money into students' pockets. Obviously, as the president, I want the union to have money so we can do things for students, but I'm not going to be one of those candidates that's going back to the kind of let's have £1 pint stuff. We get that every year, and to me, genuinely, I don't think that students are concerned about the prices in the bar. I think they're concerned about the lack of funding that's available on campus, the lack of support, the barriers, access and opportunities. Those are the things that I've been focused on over the last years, and that's the thing that I really want to be focused on next year. The whole thing about political union, I was kind of surprised to see Nessie. I don't want to do this whole kind of to and fro style election, because it's not a nice way to do it, but we've discussed all our standing policy at External Engagement Forum this year, and nobody's mentioned anything about Nestle. I think if any students don't like the Nestle policy, the great thing is it was introduced by students and it could be taken away by students as well. So these are democratic decisions that our members have told us that they want us to work on, and if that has changed, I'm more than happy to show people how they can change the policy on that. But personally, fundamentally, I agree with the policy. It's something that we've had as standing policy. It's probably one of the longest standing policies that we've got in the union, and I think we should keep it. So that's my answer.
No, but can I answer again?
No. We'll take one final question since you had your hand up for so long.
Yeah, hi, it's mostly to Ryan. On the Board of Trustees, we discussed the abolition of the forums and the replacement with the Student Parliament. Why then does your manifesto talk about encouraging people to the forums?
Because ultimately the problem will be getting people along, and the attendance diminishes. Well, an equivalent will exist. You'll invite people along, you'll email them, and if there is no engagement, if there is no mechanism to get people involved, then obviously it will just be as big a failure. Just changing the name of something, there's a saying, you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. If you just change the name of a forum and send someone an email invite, it will still be, eventually, if they're not good, if they're not worthwhile, if they don't have a point, it will just lack the same engagement as always. It was just a point. It was also a point that they have been declining year on year for a long time, and nothing's arrested that, because obviously at one point they were successful. So they are still, a sort of point as to the lack of engagement that we've had, and the fact that maybe new leadership is required in terms of getting fresh people involved.
That's why they were abolished, though.
I'll answer that. Cool, so there is something I definitely agree with you on. The forums do not work, which is why they've been destroyed. Unfortunately, the forums never kind of worked. It was just a bit of a patchwork for the SRC. I think what we're moving to now with the new constitution, which has been accepted by students and will be coming for final ratification in the next set of elections in April, will have more of a representative policy structure. I really have to take my hat off to James on this one because he really led a lot of the work on that with his class rep plans to get more involved in the policy. Before, what we had was a kind of open door thing where nobody actually came. What we've got now is you'll be able to submit ideas online, so it takes away the barrier of asking someone to come for an hour Monday to Friday so that they can be involved in each policy area of the union. I never understood why forums were clashing with classes as well. I thought that was bizarre. So what we'll have now is a student parliament that's built up of representatives from across the union and open policy that could be submitted into that. So I think that will be a better structure. The forums never really worked and we need to do something a little different on it. If we find that this kind of SRC style model doesn't work, we can reform it again. That's the great thing about student unions, we can change them when we want to. So I'd say let's see how it goes next year and let's make sure that we all kind of get involved in it.
Thank you very much, Gary and Ryan. So, as you've all probably gathered by now, well, there's also, as well as the candidates, there's also one more candidate going to be on your election page, and that's Ron. So, who's Ron? Ron stands for Reopen Nominations, and if you've not been impressed with any of the candidates in any of the elections, you can vote for Ron. And if Ron wins the election over any of the candidates, then the elections will be opened again and we'll have to, new candidates will have a chance to run. And so, as you probably know by now, as we've found out you're all involved in some way or another, polls open at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on Tuesday the 10th of March and close again at 5 p.m. on Thursday the 12th of March. You can vote online at www.strathclydeelections.com. You'll need your DS login and password, and you just click and drag your preferred candidates into your preferred order. So thank you very much everyone for coming to Candidates Question Time. Don't forget to vote, and remember if you see a poster to take a picture and hashtag Big Students Elections, and you could win an iPad mini. Thank you very much.